Hello, welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. The future belongs to builders. Together, we explore topics of interest to legal innovators. Know someone who'd make a great guest? Let us know. Self-nominations are encouraged. They're an act of courage. Want to get the most from this conversation? Ask questions, comment, like, follow, say hello. In short, engage. Lastly, have fun. Shaping the future of law requires significant effort, but finding joy in the process is essential. Let's begin. Here's your host, Olga Mack.
Well, hello everyone. It's good to see you all. I am really excited about today's conversation. It's someone I've been having many conversations on LinkedIn. I don't think we met in real life, but I
We
feel
haven't
like
met yet.
we I feel like we have. I know you want to speak, so I'm gonna let you come out. Brittany, welcome to the show. Welcome to Nose to My Legal Self. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Olga. So, as you mentioned, my name is Brittany Hernandez. I'm the head of legal innovation for Gavel. I'm also a lawyer. So, I practiced intellectual property and entertainment law before I went into the legal tech space. Prior to becoming a lawyer, I was in the military in the Coast Guard in Puerto Rico and Alaska. So, I've had a long and varied career in different places, but I'm excited to be here now talking about the future of legal innovation and the legal industry and how you can engage with that today.
I love it. I love it. So let's talk about Alaska. I
Yes.
I've been to Alaska a couple of times, but more importantly, I used to live on the at a same, I guess, parallel in another country. So very familiar with 9 months of darkness and
Yes,
the earth that never melts and that type of
correct.
stuff. So how was it? And more
It
importantly, thank you for your service, by the way. And how was it? And how did that, both Alaska and the military service, prepare you for what you're doing today?
Great question. So for me, Alaska was amazing. It was a huge change because I had prior to that been stationed in Puerto Rico, where it's sunny and beautiful and you go to the beach every day. But that was where I got to do things like drive a boat for the Coast Guard and do search and rescue missions and do law enforcement missions. And so for that, and I got to buy my first house and just sort of it became something that helped me become a grown up. It helped me to understand how to relate to other people. It helped me learn that, it's okay if you are kind of a little bit of a misfit. You can still do your job because my personality really wasn't well suited to the military, but it's something that I knew I needed to do in order to pay for law school with the GI Bill. So that's kind of how that prepared me for going forward into a career in the law. And even though that's changed a little bit from being a traditional lawyer and a sole practitioner over to what I do now, which is very different. But I do feel like the military prepared me to not always be popular. I mean, it sounds weird, but because of my personality not fitting really well, I didn't actually get along super well with everyone that I worked with, and I had to learn how to still have an effective outcome in an environment where you don't necessarily feel like you fit, and still accomplishing the goal that you set out for yourself, which in my case was to obtain the GI Bill. How can I still go through this process that I've committed to for 4 years and then for an additional 4 years in the reserve when when you personally are like, ugh, I don't know that I fit here? Can I still accomplish a goal with people, as a collective unit? So I think that really prepared me for opposing counsel and dealing with people who are not necessarily your friend, but still achieving an outcome that we both are trying to work towards for a common goal, and in this case that's for each of our clients to get what they need. So I think that that's been something that I've taken away from being in the military for sure.
I have to say, if I had to choose between Puerto Rico and Alaska, I don't even think it. I would have to think long and hard. I mean, anything
No.
close to equator is definitely by definition of paradise.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I was there, I was part of a different type of unit, which is aids to navigation. And so what we were doing was very different and very fun. I got to go up into lighthouses and help clean the lights in lighthouses or change out like a solar sensor that lets the, light know that it's time to turn on when it's sunset and these different things. So I got to do that and I got to make sure the buoys were in the right place. So it was a very different experience and I'm grateful for both experiences.
Okay. So you went to law school on a GI Bill that you
Correct.
earned.
Yes.
Congratulations. That
Thank
is a
you.
massive achievement. And again, thank you for your service. This is no joke to aside locations aside and all of that. It's still a big commitment. It takes a long time. So thank you so much for doing it.
I appreciate that.
How was law school compared to the service? Was it like, "Oh,
Yeah.
this is easy, this is a walk in the park, let's do this," or how was it?
Yeah. So it was definitely a different experience. And I had, since I had gone to undergrad before I went into law school, I'm sorry, before I went into the military, and then I was in the military for 4 years working and making money, and then going directly into law school the day after I separated from the military. That was a very interesting experience because I was out of the habit of studying. I had studied for the LSAT, of course, but it wasn't the same level of this is your life now, and also you don't make money, you give them money. I mean, even though I had the GI Bill, which was paying for
Yeah,
tuition,
that's a
it
really
was
hard
still
thing to
this.
get used to when you actually have
Yes.
to give money.
Yes, it was strange. I was used to being very independent, having my own house, and not having to kind of rely on any kind of additional financial aid or anything. And so to kind of go to be out of school in the workforce and then coming back into school was quite hard. But then that's where I found a lot of my best friends that I'm still friends with today. I loved my professors. I loved my school. I went to California Western in San Diego. I had been away for so long, living in different places. So I decided that it didn't really matter necessarily like which school it was. I just wanted to kind of be back home in San Diego, where I'm from. So I feel like that experience for me was sort of, I got to see it as a different kind of adventure. And I felt like because I had gone through the military and understood kind of what real life or death scenarios looked like, reading 10 cases a night or more, whatever else, didn't really feel that serious. Like, it was hard, but you're reading. You're not like saving a life or something right now, maybe later after you graduate, but
Are you saving
just
lives now?
yeah.
Are you
I would say I'm saving lawyers a lot of time and helping to bring more revenue, but lives, you could say that. I mean, I've seen a lot of because a lot of what I think about and care about is lawyer well-being. So I think you could say that for those of us who are trying to help people understand how you can be more efficient in your practice and reduce the amount of time that you're spending on each case so that you can reduce your billable hours but still scale. I think that we are kind of, in a way, not to be like too self-aggrandizing, but showing a different way forward that's a
No, I
healthier
think we
path,
are. I mean,
you
saving
know?
lives. You can spend a life suffering, and that's a lot of
Right,
hours of suffering. And if you can, upgrade that 10, 20% even, that's literally saving years of
right,
lives to for a better experience. It's a different life saving. It's not resuscitation and CPR
right.
type of experience, but it's helping find meaning and having more impact and in some ways living more than one life simultaneously. So I guess that's saving
Exactly.
lives.
Yeah, if you want, yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. And I think,
I mean,
what I
all
really
I need to
mean,
have is a bunch
yeah.
of law degrees to argue this,
Right. No, of course. We can take any side of this argument that we want. We could say, yeah, but I was going to say, yeah, I think it really is just sort of, I had to kind of shift my mindset and get used to the fact that me reading these cases and going to these classes and paying attention and engaging and doing well is part of a future that will make it to where I can help. In that case, when I was approaching it from a more traditional lawyer sense, helping my clients to save and protect their copyrighted works or their trademarks and their businesses, which is their source of income for their families. So in a way you kind of can look at it all of these different ways, and both of us could argue this forever that we are
That's
saving lives.
yes, for sure. That's what a lot of expensive education gives you, ability to be on either side.
Yes, exactly.
So let me ask you this: with all of those experiences, no code platform. Well, first of all, what is
Hmm.
low code, no code for those folks who don't know? I would like you to
Correct, yeah,
define it. But then,
yeah.
how does one wake up in the morning one day and say, done the Coast Guard, had the GI Bill, done some copyright cases and a few other cases, no
Right.
code platform. That's where I'm
Yes.
going next.
Where is the link? Yeah, and I actually a quick aside is that I was interviewing for a job with a company that does a lot of development work for like legal clinics and things like that. And I was, applying to be a Gavel expert and automation developer, and that kind of thing. And it would have been my first job as that thing. And they were looking at my resume and kind of saying, we don't really see the links here. How did you go from being in the
Oh, this is where
military
you
to
see,
going to
let me
law
help
school?
you see, honey. Let me
Yeah,
help you see. I'll give you the gift of
exactly.
seeing.
100%. It was like that. And actually, I really appreciated it in the long run. But at the time, it felt horrible to be told, like, we don't really see like that you're an expert in anything yet because you've kind of done this and then you've done this, but you're not world class at anything. And I thought it was a really good insight. But I was trying to say, but I really am going to be that in this thing if you give me a chance and let me show you. So that's just to say, if you look at it on paper, it doesn't make sense for someone to really go from, being in the military to going to law school and then kind of going over to this kind of really no code, low code tech side. But what happened was I originally, there's a long story about I wanted to be in the FBI. I was kind of going into law school to kind of go down that track. And then,
Brittany, who doesn't
yeah,
want to be in the FBI at
I
least
know.
once? I think
Absolutely.
everybody wants to be
I
in
think we
FBI at
all,
least
yes.
once, right? I mean,
Especially if you were watching the shows that I was watching when I was a kid. I was watching Alias and Fringe and, like in my room doing like shadow boxing, So I definitely was on that path for a while. And then when I got the chance to serve in the military and understood what it was like to be an employee of the government, and then also later when I was in law school and took criminal law classes, and I would just I would read the cases for that class and I would just start crying. And I was like, I don't think if I can't even get through these cases about what people are doing to each other, I don't think I can be the person who's necessarily kicking down doors to, fight it. And so that kind
it's
of
actually
helped
an
me.
interesting observation.
Yeah,
I remember. I actually remember a moment like that. I was like, "Wow, you did this to your neighbor, or you
right.
did this to your friend, or you
Yeah,
did this to your business partner, and now
right.
you hoping to get justice, my friend."
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly. And I kind of I think it helped to have other people kind of come into the class and tell us about their experiences, because in those classes we would have someone come in and talk about a case that they worked on, and I just kind of felt like that person knows how to compartmentalize this in their lives and be okay. But I don't know how to do that and it doesn't come naturally to me, and that's okay. And it's okay for me to look at something else that might be better suited for me, that will be more in my zone of genius, that I can be good at, And so from there, and I'll shorten this a little bit, but during orientation as well, I heard someone speak about how when they were at this clinic, New Media Rights, they were doing a project where they got to review an opera documentary, and they got to just watch the film before it went out, and they got to say, you need a license for this, you need, you're okay, this is in the public domain, and like this and that. And I was like, that's a job for a lawyer. I want that job. You get to watch a movie and tell filmmakers how to like protect their work. That sounds amazing. So then that completely changed my path. I decided to go in kind of the soft IP space of copyrights and trademarks, and in kind of getting into the how do I help filmmakers protect their work. So that ended up with me. So I didn't use all of my GI Bill for law school. I still had some left over after I finished. So I did a master's degree in international film business in London. So I lived in London for 3.5 years, and I only just moved back to California March 12th. So I've only been home for a month, and maybe you'll hear an accent come out here and there. But so it was kind of during that time that I was in my master's program, and just before it, that I started to learn about legal technology and no code platforms. And we had like Gabriel Tenenbaum talk about Q&A markup, and we had all like Dan Katz was leading a course for, I think it was a 6-week course on with Dirk Harding from Bucerius Law School about legal tech essentials. So I took that course right before I went into my master's degree, and Dorna Moini, the founder of Gavel, was one of the guests who came and spoke to us. And so she was talking about, at the time it was called Documate. She gave us all free accounts and we could play with it. And we did a hackathon that I participated in. And I just got really interested in it. I thought, why didn't we hear about this while I was in law school? And I know in the past, in past episodes, you've talked about, should we be reforming education around, legal education? Is it the time for a revolution around like how we teach students? And so I agree that we really need to be incorporating this a lot earlier, and I have seen the shift towards that. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
How
Yeah.
good. Yeah, I love that story. I let me actually kind of wanna the reason I wanna pause on that is that, many of us lawyers or legal technologists uh, teach or come and lecture,
Mhm.
and we always wonder, does that make a difference? Like,
Right.
I just spent a lot of time driving, and, didn't spend time working or with my children or my
Right.
spouse, and everyone's eyes, or at least it seemed, were glazing over. And it's been really thank you for sharing this, and I've now
Mhm.
taught for the last 10 years almost. So I now actually have heard from my students, not only at the time when they were looking for a grade, but well
Right.
after they actually used it in their lives and how impactful that was. And you articulated pretty well how that one course, one hackathon, one leader who shares
Right.
experiences gives you ability to test drive can really change trajectory of your life and how important
Absolutely.
that service is.
Yep.
I wonder, it's what happened? I'm actually really curious
Yeah.
about the rest of the story. So you you
So what
you
happened
hacked in. What happened?
next? Yeah, so I was a finalist in the hackathon and I had my free account that I just sort of I was like, okay, well, let me put that down for now and go do my master's degree and I'll come back to it later, kind of a thing. And so I took on cases while I was away and still had my own practice for a little bit. But what ended up happening is for my dissertation, I wanted to use legal technology and kind of play with this idea of how might I incorporate what I learned before I started into my master's, thesis or dissertation, you could say. And so for my project, I decided to originally I was going to create an international copyright comparison tool using Gavel, where the person could say, I'm trying to register my copyright in these different countries and I need to know like what I need to do. And so it would kind of lead you down the path of, okay, you've picked, the United States, the UK, and these are the differences and similarities, and so on and so forth. And so that was going to be quite a big project that wouldn't really fit into the time frame. And so what I ended up doing instead was I invented the design and business model for an app that would make it to where film students and early career filmmakers who have $0 for a legal budget when they're making their first film or their student film, how they could earn points. So they would, there was this ecosystem of value exchange that had it to where, you had advertisers who would have the students engage in market research. And then the students could earn those points, and then those points would translate to real dollars to spend on things like checklists, templates, and time with a lawyer. So the lawyer would still get paid at a competitive rate. And so this idea of this exchange would also incorporate sort of DIY contracts that have been reviewed by lawyers, and that would be built out with Gavel and things like that. So I started to just think about how could we get creative about the business model aspect of how we deliver legal services so that someone who doesn't have a budget for legal can still get access to the advice that they need. So that was kind of the concept there. And then I repicked back up Gavel and was interested in legal technology again and how we can increase access to legal services for people who can't afford them, and not necessarily on the pro bono side, but sort of like the people who are making a salary a little bit, but they don't necessarily have a lot of expendable income for legal services.
Yeah, I mean, the reality, when we talk about access to justice, people often assume that we're talking about indigent only. That's not
Right.
true.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, that is definitely need. It's a big need, and we must solve it. That is absolutely, but it's not even half the problem actually,
Hmm.
because majority of us, even in mid upper range, actually don't have access to various things that we should have access to and
Right.
make uninformed decisions as we go through life. And so it is not it is definitely correlated with income with respect to impact, but it is actually widespread to basically
Right.
everyone.
Right.
um, and there are
Right.
opportunities to build and have an impact and if appropriately monetize at
Hmm.
every way you dissect that need. And it's
Correct.
really
Yeah.
interesting that you were tinkering with it. Now involved with a hackathon at Oxford that is building on the hackathon at Stanford. And it's basically the point is kind of like your experience, inspire bright,
Right.
excited folks who like to learn and have impact and give them tools to go and actually solve really big problems in law,
Mhm.
which is access problem. So tell
Exactly.
me, you told the story now for a little while. I want to, I'll be really honest. I never read the book from the beginning to end. I read the
Get to
first
the end.
few. I always, I guess, cheat or whatever. I think it's very efficient. I read the first 5 pages, then I imagine what is going to be the ending. Then I read the last 5 pages, and I'm like, "Yep, I knew that."
Yep, you did
so,
not have to
tell,
read the middle.
so tell me the ending because I now have
Yes,
been on this journey for a
right.
little while. Would love to know, how did you get the job, and
Yep.
then why are you so excited about it? And by the way, I know you
Yeah.
just had a promotion, so congratulations on that
I
too.
did. Thank you
But
so much. I appreciate
before
that. So I will, yeah.
before we
I'll
get
tell
to
that story.
celebration, tell
Yes.
me the how did the story end?
Right. How did the story end? So the ending is sort of that after I was done with my master's degree, I ended up working for a legal tech company called Vala based out of Scotland. They're doing some great work on the access to justice piece, but for the middle class around employment discrimination and how you can, kind of self-representers and how they can, put together their bundles and so on. So I got to work with them. I picked back up the tool of Gavel at the time and decided to become a Gavel developer for gig law with Haley Leviashvili. I did that for a short time, but I had all these other ideas as well. I felt like, when I was learning it myself, there was a need for a certification program for Gavel. So I decided to create that and reached out to Dorna and said, I'd really love to create this. Is that okay? And she said yes. So now I have a basic silver and gold course for Gavel. And then also I was doing like lightning talks with them and I started that. And so I just got really excited and engaged with like how it made me feel like I had a superpower. I mean, no code technology and low code technology, these types of tools, they make you feel like you can do anything and they give you an instant gratification that you don't
It's that,
get.
and I think it's a little bit more. It is
Yeah,
people who give you a chance. It is
right,
people who make you feel like you're special
right,
and you can make a difference independent of where you come from and who you are and who your parents are, and give you opportunities and say, look, you can't make it any worse. It's already pretty bad. Look how many problems we have. Any improvement is going to be for the better. So go
right,
help yourself and everyone else at that, for that matter. And
right.
that's for driven, excited people with
Yes,
high energy and love for making a difference. That's
right.
pretty much all you need.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I would say there too, as a little piece of advice from the way that I was able to kind of launch to where I am now, is that I gave people something to say yes to. So instead of going like, oh, it'd be nice if we could do something together maybe in the future, instead I said, I have this fully formed idea, just say yes and I will go execute. Maybe we make a few tweaks here and there, but I brought something that they could look at quickly and say, yes, we can do that, or no, we can't do that, or yes, we can do that if you make these two tweaks. Now go and execute. So that was things like the lightning talks and the certification courses and things like that. So I feel like if you're
No,
trying to get a job in this space, bring something to the table they can say yes
I
to.
think it's true for every job. The most compelling
Yeah.
thing you can say in the interview is that here's how I'm going to improve your life
Yes.
on the day one.
Yes, and this is
And
how
then
this
it's
will
going to
lead
get
to more
better from there.
customers. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of what I did with Dorna, and Gavel was just that. I had all these ideas because I was going through the process of becoming a Gavel expert myself. So I was trying to understand what was I struggling with, or like what would have made it easier for me to do this a little bit faster. And so I wanted to fill that gap. So because I did that and was working with Dorna, I got invited by them very quickly to become the global ambassador to law schools, which is what I've been doing for the past year and a half, which is delivering the very same presentations that I heard Dorna deliver back in 2020 when I first met her in that same, course that I was telling you about from Dan and all the different people I mentioned. So it was very full circle to become the person who does the presentations that inspire students to then come around and build things and try things. So my two requirements when because I really liked what I was doing, building out automations for other lawyers with Gavel and other tools as well, was will I get paid the same at least? And the other one was, in my role, will I still be able to build tools out with build different apps with the tool, because I that's the part that I really like.
So
So I
what is
didn't want to
the answer
lose
to
that.
1 and 2? What is now that you asked
Yes.
it, how did the conversation go?
Great. She said yes and yes.
I love that. I love that. I mean, yes and a yes
Yeah.
are not good answers. Um,
Yes.
that, well, and most recently you got promoted. I mean,
Yes.
that is a story with many happy endings and
Yes, exactly. Yes.
adventures, really, all over the world, kind of.
Yeah. And it was one of those things where you sort of, you found something that you're really good at that you can do naturally and that comes easy to you, or that you want to spend all your time doing. I don't know if you read a lot of Gay Hendricks books around like the Big Leap and the Genius Zone, but it's the idea of, what can you do all day without getting tired that you enjoy and that you can get paid for, and try to find this zone that you can live in. And for me, that was building out automations and then teaching other people how to do that too. And so what ended up happening is I was transitioning from living in London, having my own business and kind of facilitating the law school program, moving back to the United States and trying to figure out what that was going to look like. And so in that transition, I kind of went to Dorna and I said, look, it'd be really great if I could become a full-time team member rather than kind of part-time contractor facilitating this one program. Do you have a spot for me on your team? And initially she said, not right now because we just did a bunch of hiring. So maybe next year. So I was kind of going off and looking at other opportunities and reaching out to different people. And then about 2 weeks later, she came back and said, actually, we would love to have you join the team and we want to offer you a job. And can you start in 2 weeks? So for the past, so for the past 3.5 weeks, I've been the head of legal innovation for Gavel. So my role has changed in that my audience is a little bit different. I still facilitate the academic program. So if any, professors need me to come and do guest lectures and so on, and, facilitating the distribution of free accounts for students and things like that. But my main change is the people I'm talking to are practicing attorneys now. And I want to make sure that they are understanding how to use these types of rapid development tools in order to not only transform their practices internally, but see the possibilities from the productization standpoint, which is where we see the industry going.
So believe it or not, we're coming to the end, and I feel like we
Oh,
just started.
wow. Yes.
So let me ask a few questions because I'm around the rapid development. What
Yeah.
is that? Just so that folks have,
Mhm.
and if they want to learn more, they can get in touch with you. But like definitionally, what is it? Like, what is it, and how do you eat it? Type of thing.
Yes. Good question. So I actually think that the best definition for me personally, when I was first trying to get into this space, was by a tool called Softer. So I know the CEO Miriam and have met her, and she's amazing. But she kind of says as a quote that it's this kind of like software genius democratization, where it's like anyone who has any inclination towards building something online but doesn't have the technical skills for doing that, now we've created, or these tools have been created so that that person, the citizen developer or whatever, can kind of access this ability to create products and apps and client portals and websites and all of that without having to have a coding background. So this is the idea that there are certain things that are default elements, and the way that you, as the person who's using these tools, interact with them is meant to be intuitive. That it says, I want this block to go over here, and then I want to move it up and down, and then I want to put a button here that goes to this place. And so instead of having to type all that in coding or having to learn HTML, GSS, CSS, and JavaScript, and all these different languages or Python, you just say, I'm going to sign up for an account, and an hour later you have a website and you have that be a client portal.
So all you
That's
have
what
to have,
rapid development is.
all you as a citizen developer, all you
Yes,
have to have is a vision.
exactly. That's the best way to describe the definition
Okay.
of no code rapid development. Yeah.
So let's make it really concrete. Now that you have a
Yep.
vision, what are the examples of things you can create
Yep.
so folks can kind of maybe refine
See
their
what's in it.
vision of of what's possible?
Right. So obviously I'm here, representing Gavel, so I'll use that as an example. So with Gavel, for example, you can create internal tools that you or your paralegal use to create documents in a couple of clicks rather than, duplicating a Word document and then going in and typing in each person's name. What you can do is build an automation for, let's say, an estate plan that is, something that pulls information you already have, let's say from Clio or another system that you use, pushes it into that particular workflow, and out pops a will and a power of attorney and a HIPAA authorization and so on and so forth. The second part of that is that you can create client-facing products now, and that's what I was mentioning about this kind of difference between
So
sort of just pure
the first
document
example,
automation.
let's pause you. I want to make sure
Yeah.
that this is not lost. I think you making
Okay.
it you differentiating between sort of something that helps a lawyer, right? So something like you put a contraption together after you had a vision, not visions, a vision, a specific vision, not many visions. And once you have that, you can generate things to improve your practice, right? Things
Exactly.
that are for you to then kind of keep working on, kind of
Right.
a first draft of whatever. Use case number one, and then I
Yep.
think you now gradually transitioning to use case number two, which hey, you can automate your practice. Maybe you don't, it's not a creative exercise. Maybe you sort of stamping out things, and it's a much more administrative part of your practice, and
Mhm.
you may just directly give it to your customers. And like, what would be examples of that?
Exactly. So a really good example is Hello Divorce, where the platform itself is, the underlying infrastructure of Hello Divorce is built on Gavel. And so what happens is that somebody has a DIY divorce option for $400. So they can go through the process of typing in their answers, and they get, underlying that is different logic that the client is interacting with rather than the lawyer. So that's the difference, like you mentioned, between internal just for your team and the client never sees it versus a standalone product that has a paywall that somebody says, here's my $400, and they get instant access to the questionnaire that's built with Gavel that then generates the documents that they need to file with the court, for example.
Okay, I love it. So you
Yeah.
can improve your practice, you can improve your clients' lives. What
Yep.
else? What else can you do with this tool? How
Yeah.
versatile is
So
it?
Yeah, so I think what's another interesting aspect of this is the client portal. So you can do it to where somebody never creates a portal with you at all or has their own dedicated place where their past sessions are stored, for example. But in another scenario, you can make it to where if let's say the client buys multiple bundles or that's a series of questionnaires that are bundled together in a package. So let's say for estate planning is just a really good example where you have multiple documents that a person needs to fill out.
Estate
So
planning is where they
yeah.
ask you a lot of deep questions, like where do you
Yeah.
want your stuff and kids to go if you happen to
Yes.
die?
Who will take care of your kids? So all of those different ones that you need to, you have them answering all these different questions. So instead of having them, do it one time and then, they have to redo their information over again, we have client portals dedicated to each of your clients that you can have them create that makes it to where all of the information they've already previously entered automatically gets populated in the future. So if they've already put in their social security number or their first name and their last name and their address and their kids' names and all that, if you structure it correctly from a variable strategy standpoint, which is a little bit of a weeds conversation, then what happens is the person can, have it, they only have to fill out something that they haven't answered before. So I feel like that's a really good aspect of it as well, which is this idea of data persistence and data management. So yeah, that's a really exciting feature as well.
Okay, last question before
Okay.
we really do have to say goodbye at some point, and I'm
Okay.
committed to that because there's no
Okay.
other way to end the show. But
I know.
let me ask you this: say I want to try, I want to dip my toes. Like I don't want to
Right.
jump head first. I want to do something little, see if it's for me, and maybe
Mhm.
incrementally get into a pool or not. I make
Right.
that decision kind of as I experiment. What is your
Yep.
top advice for doing that?
Right. So I think there's two things I'd say, which is, at least a lot of tools have a free tier. So they let you try it for free. So in our case, we have it to where you can have 7 day free trial. You don't have to put in your credit card. So there's a lot, like a very easy entry point there where you can just, kind of tinker around with it. And if it's not for you, that's completely fine. And if you like it, you can upgrade or not. Other tools also have, a free forever tier or whatever else. So I feel like there's a very low entry point on many of these kind of SaaS tools or software as a service tools. So just start a trial and give it a try. And the second thing I would say is I have an academy that has a lot of free exercises and courses that you can take. So if you go to chromiumacademy.com, there's a 1 hour workflow exercise. We put a timer on for 1 hour. And by the end of that hour, we've built an automation together.
I love that. Well,
Yeah.
Brittany, imagine that we actually reached the destination. It's hard to believe. We covered a lot of ground. I mean,
We did.
we managed to talk about Alaska, Puerto Rico, the no code tools and all kinds of other stuff and ways you can get it
Mhm.
into a pool. I mean, I think we just covered a lot of
We
ground.
covered a lot.
What is the one thing you want people to do or take away from this conversation if they take nothing else? I mean, my
Mhm.
takeaway is that if you have a choice between Alaska and Puerto Rico, it's no choice at all.
That's definitely a takeaway that I want to reemphasize. But I think what I would say is that I think that there's a lot of talk about the future and hypothetically if AI does this and maybe it will go that way. And I just want to emphasize that this is not a hypothetical scenario. People that are you and they went to law school and they have practiced law for 11 years, they are building legal tech companies using these tools and they're doing it themselves, which makes me as the consumer feel very good that a lawyer and a subject matter expert is the one building this rather than a developer who doesn't understand my needs because they've never worked with a client before who has this issue. So I feel like you can engage in the future of technology today by starting your free trial, trying things out, doing the different exercises, and then taking that and applying it to your own templates and your own knowledge. So it's not hypothetical. This is now and something that you can do as well.
I love it. The tools are here. You
The tools
have
are
a
here.
the tools are here. You have a vision. Go help yourself. It
Yeah,
is
you have
really
everything you
that
need.
easy.
It is. Yep.
Well, thank you, Brittany, for this conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed. I can't wait to actually meet you in person in a
I
couple
know.
of weeks.
I will see you in person very soon. I'll see you in Tallinn, Estonia.
Yeah,
I'm
see you.
excited.
I almost never tell people see you in Tallinn, Estonia, but
That is not something I say every day, that's for sure. But I'm
but
excited to see you there. I was there last year and it was very fun. So I'm excited that you're going to be there too.
I am super excited. Thank you everyone for joining. I hope I'll see you there in Tallinn, Estonia. It's an amazing place. I haven't been there in about 30 something years. So I look
Hmm.
forward to being there. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
For stopping by. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Notes to My Legal Self. The future belongs to builders. Know someone who'd make a great guest? Let us know. Self nominations are encouraged, they're an act of courage. Keep in mind, the future of law is all lit up. Let's roll up our sleeves, innovate, build, and change the world of law together. See you soon.